Thanks, Noel, and thanks, Ben, and thanks all my colleagues at UCL for such a wealth of presentations and detail about the 15-minute neighborhood as well. I've learned so much from the presentations, and I've been scribbling away furiously, as you might imagine, of trying to bring some sense of coherence from the different presentations, but also perhaps pointers for the future as well. 15-minute neighborhoods are proven to be a very useful and I suppose popular rallying call for communities, not just in London or the UK, but globally at the present time. And before we rush headlong into shaping the 15-minute neighborhood, I'd like to set out some key issues for consideration that you might think are provocations in some way. The first issue is one of definition and aspiration, what we want to achieve. And the emphasis is very much on enabling communities to walk or cycle to essential services within 15 minutes of their home. And the emphasis there is on walkability, on cycling, reducing car dependency, access to services and green space, but also safety as well. The pandemic has led to new ways of thinking and working about how we live and work. More people have been working from home, but also there's been increased awareness about the impacts of COVID on such things as isolation, on segregation, and the lack of access to green space for health and well-being, and even on the pace of life for many people as well. Now, many of these issues are not new. Jane Jacobs wrote about these issues back in the 60s, where she referred to neighborhoods as great social connectors. They're essential because they allow us all from different backgrounds and walks of life to interact with each other as we go about our lives and our businesses. But even Jane Jacobs recognized that what sort of city was being created at that time, 50 years ago, according to the then planning doctrine, was very much a particular niche approach to thinking about the city, but it was also dominated by a complete emphasis on the car. And I think we've now reached the stage that for the sake of our well-being, our prosperity even, we need to rebalance how we manage the city in favor of pedestrians and cyclists, not only for our own sanity, but for our safety and of course for our health as well. The issue, of course, is that's reversing 50 years of policy. And there will be great resistance from the usual quarters about how that's going to be achieved, and indeed whether it should be achieved at all. So this is not a straightforward linear process that's going to happen quickly or easily. There will be disruptions, and politics and vested interests, I'm afraid, will be at the heart of trying to make some of these bold decisions. But we need a city space to escape from overcrowded homes, and where increasingly we've seen a great blurredness between our home and our work. But this means resetting the dial, changing our priorities, retrofitting the whole urban fabric, and of course that will take some time. The second issue, a set of provocations, are challenges. That's not only about how we achieve the aspirations of the 15-minute neighborhood, but also because it'll be easy for it to be appropriated as a label for other agendas and other interests. It'll be all too easy for existing advantaged communities to adopt the label of the 15-minute neighborhood. Estate agents are going to love it, I'm sure, and it very much could accidentally or deliberately fall into the hands of the independent coffee shop areas as an aspirational lifestyle label that will attract people to it. And of course, it will be set, therefore, in the existing well-off places of our cities, not the sort of places that perhaps we want to see targeted by these sorts of endeavors. So we need to be sensitive about how inclusive some of these agendas are from the outset, but also consider where boroughs perhaps need to prioritize geographically, even politically, areas that have become the most disadvantaged through those previous interventions or the lack and loss of services. Another issue is the danger of agendas being cancelled out, the good intentions being cancelled out by other initiatives. This includes, for example, the UK government's permitted development agendas that allow shops and offices in the high street, for example, to be converted into residential property without planning permission. Now, we all want affordable housing and more affordable housing, but there's a danger there that that could actually lead to a denigration of the high street and our commercial areas in a greater way, just as we're embarking on new policies to try and make those places accessible and inclusive for all. These are the wider pressures that a successful 15-minute neighborhood will bring. They're the domino effect. Every time we intervene, it will cause other sets of problems that will then need to be addressed. It will attract the interests of developers and people even from other parts outside the 15-minute neighborhood, as the initial novelty of the place will start to be recognized. So therefore, we need to be careful about how we manage this, that some of the political boldness that will be required will resist the forces of gentrification, and a phase selective approach to what issues are prioritized before others. The third issue and final issue is how we do it. And the essential ingredients here are well-being, communities, infrastructure, and growth. And those often competing issues will only be addressed by some critical factors. And I've got 5. The first is vision. What do you want your place to be in the medium to long term? You have to think medium to long-term perspectives to bring about these agendas. The second is benefit. What multiple benefits can be achieved for the maximum number of people by taking decisions now, not singular outcomes or policy siloed outcomes, but multiple benefits simultaneously. The third issue is inclusivity. How will the life course benefit? People from all walks of life, but all age groups, benefit in a changed built environment. And how will you allocate resources and budgets to bring about that as well? How do you enable citizens and communities to start to take their own decisions about some of the choices to do with their own places as well? The fourth set of issues are of creativity, and there will need to be creative use of multiple budgets going forward rather than a single budget pot. But that might mean that small-scale pilot proof of concept interventions might be a good starting point to create a honeypot effect rather than a big bang. We still need growth in places, and places still need to be economically successful as well as socially beneficial and environmentally just. How do we support small business development, community startups, and cooperatives to flourish in these sorts of places as well? That might also include things like guerrilla gardening that have become very popular in cities, or even the onset of pocket parks to be created, and culture and arts that are accessible to all, because those things will bring the footfall into some of these places to make them viable over the medium to long term. And the final set of issues are to do with distinctiveness. Copying how the 15-minute neighborhood is done elsewhere, where places are regarded as successful, won't work. The most successful places will be those that are emerging from the unique character and assets of the place in question. Those issues that are already embedded within the stones and memories of a locality that could be harnessed to good effect. That will boost the economic and social resilience of the place as well. Now, these 5 factors are some of the critical elements, in my view, that could serve as pathways to the future for places, politicians, and communities to consider their options ahead. 15-minute neighborhoods are here to stay, I think, as an aspirational future for places and for people. The devil will be in the translation detail to make them a practical reality. Thanks very much.